That's an interesting question, and it's a huge question. So there are definitely good contributions that biblical ethics have made to the world. In fact, I think it's probably safe to say that most of our modern Western systems of government can trace important roots back to biblical ethics. The whole world of religion and government were so ubiquitously intertwined for so long that governmental systems and legal codes maintained their divine rights, their divine authority by looking to the Bible. And so we can find biblical concepts at work in laws today. But at the same time, it's also important to keep in mind that a lot of the task of texts in the Bible was to define what it meant to be Israelite or to be Christian over against neighboring cultures or neighboring people groups. And that implies necessarily a certain exclusivity. There's a certain exclusionary principle at work there. So, for example, during the time of the Babylonian exile in the Hebrew Bible, which is my area of specialty, what does it mean to be Israelite if you're not in the land of Israel? If you can't go to the temple and make your sacrifices to Israel's God because you're removed from the land? How do you be Israelite in that world? And so the answer came to the people of Israel that you are Israelite in terms of what you do, who you are and how you act over against the people around you, over against the Babylonians or the Assyrians or something like that. So the ethics of the people was how they came to define their own identity. But that's an exclusionary ethic. So very often they would define themselves as not those people. And so when we take those ethical ideas into the modern age, it's hard to remove ourselves from that exclusionary language. And we end up very often bringing biblical concepts into the modern world that exclude us from other people. And that's where problems arise. That's when we start to divide ourselves into categories of us versus them. And so one of the principles of doing biblical ethics for the modern day is trying to break down those walls and decide, how do we want to be people of faith who can interact with other people who think differently than we do?